Here is a great, deeply detailed summary of the whole passage you gave, written like a story a beginner or child could understand. This summary will help you remember everything clearly, with all the important ideas and extra meaning explained. Detailed, simple summary. Around the year 1075 CE, a powerful prince from the Chola Empire named Rajiga, later known as Kulotunga Ad, decided to finally take full control of the Vengi region. This was not just a small or peaceful action. Kulotunga used of the entire Chola Empire's army, money, political power, and network to take over Vengi completely. Earlier, Kulotunga's uncle, a man named Vijayaditya II, had been ruling Vengi. But Kulotunga did not trust him. They had a difficult and possibly bitter personal history. So Kulotunga removed him and took the territory for himself. He was not willing to share power with someone who had possibly betrayed him or his family. At that time, the Chalukya Empire, who were supposed to be protecting or influencing Vengi, was divided and weak. Their royal family was busy fighting among themselves. Because of this inner conflict, the Chalukyas could not stop Kulotunga's move. As a result, the Cholas finally got total control of Vengi, a region that was very rich and had fertile land for farming. Vijayaditya, who had spent many years trying to keep power through tricks and betrayals, failed in the end. He gave up and ran away. He went to Gangavati in modern-day Karnataka and joined a Chalukya prince named Vikramaditya, a clever and ambitious man. In the next year, at 1076 CE, another Chalukya prince, Samashvara II, tried to make friends with Kulotunga. Kulotunga agreed and sent an army to attack Vikramaditya, who had helped Vijayaditya. But Vikramaditya was strong and defeated the Chola expedition. He stopped them from beating him. Vikramaditya then accused his elder brother Sameshvara II of betraying the Chalukya family by making an alliance with the Cholas, their old enemies. This may seem funny or hypocritical, because Vikramaditya himself had also made alliances and betrayals before. But still, he used this excuse to gain support. Vikramaditya began marching toward the Chalukya Kalyana, and many other soldiers and supporters joined him, making his army larger and stronger. There was only weak resistance against him. Eventually, Vikramaditya's brother, Sameshvara II, was captured. The writer adds that Vikramaditya may have always hated his elder brother, perhaps because their father loved the elder brother more, even though Vikramaditya had worked hard. This kind of jealousy and family drama is common in royal families. After Sameshvara's defeat, he disappears from the pages of history. This is not surprising. Many rulers in Indian history tried to take power in the Deccan, but failed and vanished. The writer gives examples like Mangalesha Chalukya, Queen Vijaya Mahadevi, things like Dante Durga and Govinda II, Hati of the Paramara. All of them tried to grab the throne, but history forgot them. Finally, the writer ends with a dramatic line. The father's favorite was dead. Long live fortune's favorite, Vikramaditya VI. This means Sameshvara VI, the elder son who was favored by their father, was gone. Now, Vikramaditya VI became king of the Chalukyas. He is called fortune's favorite because he was lucky and successful, even though others had worked harder or tried longer. In short, the big picture. Kulotunga Chola took Vengi with full power and kicked out his uncle. The Chalukyas were too weak to stop him due to inner family fights. Vijayaditya fled and went to Vikramaditya for help. Sameshvara II, Vikramaditya's brother, tried to ally with the Cholas. Vikramaditya defeated both, captured, became king. Many people like Sameshvara failed to win the Deccan throne and were forgotten. But Vikramaditya VI succeeded, and history remembers him as the fortune's favorite. Would you like a character list, a timeline, a chart, just even clearer? Here's a great, deep, detailed summary of the passage, explained in the most simple and clear way possible, like a story for a beginner or curious child. Every important idea is included with full meaning and extra explanation for detailed summary. The great reign of Vikramaditya VI. In 1076 CE, a powerful Chalukya prince Vikramaditya became king. This moment was very important. He was not just in one of the longest, richest, and most admired reigns in South Indian history. He would go on to rule for 50 years, which is a very long time for any ruler. During these 5 decades, he worked hard to make himself look like a once-in-a-thousand-years emperor, a ruler so great that people would remember him for centuries. He saw himself as the greatest king the Deccan region, Middle and Southern India, had ever seen. A new era begins. When Vikramaditya VI became king, it was the year 909 in the Shaka era, which was one of the main calendar systems used in India back then. That year is the same as 1076 CE in our modern calendar. To mark his rise to power, Vikramaditya started a brand new time period, called the Vikrama era, named after himself. This new era was used in inscriptions, which are messages or announcements carved in stone by kings and officials. It was like saying, "This is the beginning of something big. From now on, time will be counted by my name." This was a powerful way to show that he was special and that his reign was the start of a new chapter in history. A powerful and energetic ruler. Even before becoming king, Vikramaditya, a strong and active leader. He had worked as a prince, a diplomat, a person who makes deals and alliances, and a general military leader under his father, Someshvara I. After becoming king, he kept up that same level of energy and leadership. He ruled over a huge area, a big part of the Deccan, stretching from today's North Karnataka down to the southwest, and even into coastal Andhra Pradesh. His rule was not just powerful. The region also became more rich and prosperous during his time. So, even though there were wars and battles, the land and its people also grew economically and culturally. Proof of his power. Inscriptions everywhere. We know about Vikramaditya's rule because we find inscriptions from his time in many different places. These stone carvings have been found in Kalyana, his capital, Ponuguppe, Edagiri, Padalakare, Apainadakupa, Balakunde, Manyakere, Kolipake, Jananathapuram. These places are spread out across modern Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. This shows how far his control reached. His empire and feudatories. Vikramaditya was not the only ruler in his empire. He had many feudatories, smaller kings who ruled under his authority. These feudatories were located all across his empire, including Nagpur in the north, modern Maharashtra, Gangavati in South Karnataka, Draksharama on the coast of Andhra. However, not all these smaller rulers were equally loyal. Some followed him closely, others only partly. Still, the fact that so many feudatories existed across such a large area shows that his empire was vast and powerful. A patron of knowledge and culture, like his father, Vikramaditya supported education, language, and literature. He made sure that a lot of writing was done in Sanskrit, which was the language of scholars and important people in those days. Thanks to his support, his capital city, Kalyana, became a famous center of learning, culture, and royal power. It gained a reputation as a great city of kings, wisdom, and strength. How he was remembered. Even after his death, Vikramaditya V's rule was remembered with great admiration, especially by people living in the 60s. About years later, his reign was seen as a golden age, a time of strength, wealth, and moral greatness. People looked back at Vikramaditya and the Chalukya dynasty as the perfect example of a strong, just, and glorious empire. In short, what made Vikramaditya VI great? Ruled for 50 years, starting in 176 CE, called himself a millennial king, a once-in-a-1,000 years ruler, started a new era named after himself, Vikrama era. Ruled over a huge part of South India, Deccan, was energetic, powerful, and smart in war and politics. Had many feudatories serving under him from all directions. Supported Sanskrit learning and writing. Like his father, made Kalyana a famous cultural and royal center, was remembered even centuries later as a legendary ideal king. Would you like me to create a map, timeline, or a story version of his life? I can also explain the Vikrama era calendar or his capital city, Kalyana, in more detail if you want. Here is a great, deep, and detailed summary of the passage you gave, explained simply, clearly, and thoroughly. Summary. The glorious court of Vikramaditya VI and its hidden dangers. Vikramaditya VI, one of the greatest kings of the Western Chalukya dynasty, ruled from the capital, Kalyana. Under his leadership, Kalyana became a rich and glamorous royal court, attracting many famous poets, religious thinkers, and scholars from across India. One of the most notable poets was Bilhana, a Brahmin, priestly class, who came all the way from Kashmir in northern India. He wrote a famous Sanskrit poem called the Vikramanka Devacharitam, which told the story of Vikramaditya as a perfect prince and ideal son. But in real life, Vikramaditya had many family problems. His own younger brother Jayasimha rebelled against him, just like he had earlier rebelled against their elder brother Someshvara too. Jayasimha failed, but it showed that family betrayals and power struggles continued even under a great king. The Chalukya court wasn't just about politics and war. It also became a cultural and intellectual center. Many important texts were written at this time. Mitakshara, a powerful law book written in Sanskrit. It was a couple version of older Hindu law texts. It was so influential that it was later translated into Persian, used by Muslim rulers, and also into Tamil and Telugu, major Indian languages. It became one of the most important legal texts in Indian history. Manasolasa, written by Vikramaditya's son and successor Shvara III, this was a huge royal handbook. It included information on food, music, dance, sports, festivals, and how kings should enjoy life and rule wisely. It was part encyclopedia, part guidebook for princes. Meanwhile, the Chalukya court moved across many places in the Deccan, central South India. Continuing its rich traditional court spent a lot on art, poetry, sports, and entertainment, like elephant races, wrestling, and hunting, to show off their luxury and royal power. But while the kings enjoyed court life, something dangerous was happening in the background. Brahmin families whose generals became very powerful. Feudatories, chiefs under the Chalukya Empire, also grew stronger in their own regions. These growing powers, while helping run the empire, started to act independently and challenge the central authority of the king. All of this would eventually lead to a major disaster late in Vikramaditya's reign, a topic that comes up later in history. Key points to remember. 1. Kalyana under Vikramaditya VI was rich, cultured, and full of art and learning. 2. Famous people like Bilhana came from faraway places to be part of the court. 3. Important texts like Mitakshara, law, and Manasolasa, royal life manual, were written here. 4. The king's family life was full of with brothers fighting for the throne. 5. The royal court showed off its through entertainment and luxury. 6. Powerful ministers and local rulers were growing too strong, which would later hurt the kingdom. Would you like me to now summarize what happened in that disaster later in his reign? Or do you want a visual map or chart of this summary? Sure. Here's a great summary of the entire passage you gave, explained in very simple and clear language like you asked, and with full context. Detailed simple summary, Vikramaditya VI and Rajiga Kulotunga. This passage tells the story of two powerful kings from South India in the 1000 CE, Vikramaditya VI of the Western Chalukya Empire and Rajiga Kulotunga Asur of the Chola Empire. These two were rivals, and their time as kings was filled with smart politics, quiet conflicts, betrayals, and important changes in how empires were run. 1. Vikramaditya Vi's big dream. Vikramaditya VI wanted to defeat the Chola. He ended the long and painful wars between the Chalukyas and Cholas. But his dream didn't come true because a strong new Chola king came to power. 2. A new Chola king. Rajiga Kulotunga. Rajiga Kulotunga became king of the Cholas after a fight with his cousin Adhirajendra. He was clever, realistic, and calm, very different from older Chola kings who loved faraway wars. During Rajiga's fight for power, Sri Lanka took back its freedom and kicked out the Cholas around 1070 to 73 CE. Rajiga did not try to retake Sri Lanka. He accepted the loss, showing he was practical, not overly ambitious. 3. Rajiga's strategy. Strength from within. Instead of expanding far away, Rajiga focused on making the Chola Empire stronger from the inside. He strengthened Pallava lands, his original base. He turned Vengi into a training ground for his sons, giving them experience to rule. He used the title Vishnuvardhana in Vengi, a name from ancient Chalukya kings, to make himself seem like a rightful ruler there. In areas near modern Odisha, he used marriage and military displays to win local loyalty. He did not launch risky expeditions like older kings. He redesigned the Chola Empire to be a purely Tamil power, focusing on Tamil identity and heartlands. 4. Quiet rivalry with Vikramaditya. Rajiga and Vikramaditya were personal enemies. They didn't fight huge wars like their ancestors, but remained tense rivals. As Rajiga grew older and Vikramaditya invaded northern Vengi and won some territory. 5. Vikramaditya's own trouble begins. Just when Vikramaditya was doing well, his own vassals, junior kings, turned against him. A big rebellion was led by the Hoysalas of South Karnataka, the Kadambas of Goa. This was ironic because these two dynasties had helped Vikramaditya in the past when he was fighting to become king. The Hoysalas even gave him a home base, Gangavati, when he was planning to overthrow his brother. 6. The main message. This story shows how ruthless and selfish kings and nobles could be in medieval times. Today's ally could become tomorrow's enemy. Power was more important than loyalty. Kings used marriage, war, flattery, and betrayal as tools. Both Vikramaditya and Rajiga were smart and strategic, but their story shows how unstable power politics could be. Why this is important. This period was crucial in South Indian history. The Chalukyas and Cholas were two major empires. Their rivalry shaped the politics, economy, and culture of the Deccan and Tamil regions. Rajiga Kulotunga helped reshape the Chola Empire as more Tamil-based and locally focused. Vikramaditya VI tried to expand the Chalukya Empire, but his own allies turned against him. These events led to the rise of new powers later on, like the Hoysalas. Let me know if you'd like a timeline, a character map, or even a diagram of the empires. I can make those too, in the same simple and clear style. Here is a great, deep, detailed summary of the passage you shared, in very simple English, like you're learning for the first time. I'll include extra explanation to make it as easy and complete as possible. Deep summary in simple words. In the late 1000s and early 1100s CE, South India was changing fast. Two big powers, the Cholas from Tamil Nadu and the Chalukyas from Karnataka, had been fighting each other for many years. But now, new rulers like the Hoysalas were taking over. 1. The rebellion against Vikramaditya VI. Some smaller kings, like the Hoysalas and Kadambas, once worked for the powerful Chalukya Emperor Vikramaditya VI. But later, they became strong and bold enough to rebel against him. Vikramaditya crushed this rebellion with violence. He attacked the Kadamba capital, Gopakapanam, and looted and destroyed it. This is called sacking a city. But one important thing happened. Even though the rebellion was defeated, the Hoysalas were not destroyed. They survived, and soon they would become even stronger. Passion number 2, Rise of Hoysala Vishnuvardhana. The Hoysala king Vishnuvardhana began defeating the Cholas and taking over their land. By the year 118 CE, he had driven the Cholas out of the southern Karnataka region, once ruled by an older dynasty called the Gangas. Captured the important ancient city of Talakad, which was once the capital of the Gangas. This showed that the Hoysalas were now a real threat to the old empires. Number 3. Temple raids in Tamilakam. Historians say the Hoysalas also attacked Tamil lands, Tamilakam. They broke into temples, took the sacred idols, and looted temple treasures. This wasn't just about gold. It was a way of showing power. We are stronger than you. Even stronger than your gods and kings. Number 4. Vishnuvardhana builds his own empire. At the same time, Vishnuvardhana was not only a warrior, but also a builder and planner. He built grand temples, like the famous ones at Belur and Helebidu, helped farmers grow crops in new areas, strengthened his government and control over the land. This followed a common pattern in Indian history. Conquer land, build temples, help farming, control the people better. 5. Vikramaditya VI dies. Hoysala power grows. In 1126, Chalukya Emperor Vikramaditya VI died. After the Hoysalas felt free and powerful enough to act like emperors themselves, Vishnuvardhana took grand imperial titles, claiming to be a ruler of kings, just like the old Chalukyas once did. 6. Other small powers rise. At the same time, other old vassals, former junior kings of the Chalukyas, also became independent and strong. The Sona Yadavas in parts of Maharashtra, the Kakatiyas in Telangana. Together with the Hoysalas, they made the old big empires, Chalukyas and Cholas, weak and unimportant. 7. Hoysalas create their own empire. With the Chalukyas too weak to stop them, the Hoysalas began expanding. They took parts of the upper Kaveri River Valley from the Cholas, rich farmland and strategic areas. This was the start of a new empire, the Hoysala Empire, centered in Karnataka. 8. Fall of the Cholas, rise of the Pandyas. While the Hoysalas were rising, another old power, the Pandyas of Madurai, also saw a chance. They attacked the Cholas, destroyed their famous capital city, Gangaikonda Cholapuram, and ended the Chola Empire by the 1200s, 13th century. This was the final blow to Chola greatness. Final summary. What happened overall? The Cholas and Chalukyas were once very powerful, but their own former junior kings, like the Hoysalas, Yadavas, and Kakatiyas, became more powerful. The Hoysalas, under Vishnuvardhana, defeated enemies, built temples, and formed their own empire in Karnataka. The Cholas lost control of their lands, and finally, the Pandyas destroyed their capital and ended their rule. By the 1200s, a new map of South India had formed, no longer ruled by the old Chola or Chalukya empires, but by new rising powers like the Hoysalas and Pandyas. Would you like a timeline chart, a map summary, or a simple diagram showing these events? I can make those too. Here's a great, deeply detailed summary of the entire passage you provided, written in very simple English for easy understanding. It pulls together all important ideas clearly and step by step. Summary of the passage, simplified and detailed. This passage explains that while history in the Deccan region, central southern India, might look like a never-ending cycle of kings rising and falling, something much more important and meaningful was happening beneath the surface. 1. The Chalukyas' kings. The Chalukyas of Vadapi in present-day Karnataka started not as kings, but as simple farmers or herders. There was no powerful ruler in their region at the time, so the area was a political vacuum, a place with no clear leader. From this empty space, the Chalukyas built a powerful empire, the first of its kind in the Deccan. 2. Bringing royal culture to the Deccan. The Chalukyas used ideas like kingship, temples, vassals, smaller rulers under a king, and royal rituals, all borrowed from older North Indian traditions, called Sanskritic systems. They adapted these systems to local Deccan customs, making something new and special, a Deccan way of ruling. This made the Deccan region politically organized for the first time. 3. Growth of the Deccan Empire system. Later dynasties like the Rashtrakutas took this system and expanded it greatly. They included more land, like the farming areas of Maharashtra and the rich trading ports on the west coast. The Rashtrakutas used Kannada, a local language in royal courts, along with Sanskrit, making Kannada a language of power. 4. Cultural and political flourishing under the Kalyana Chalukyas. After the Rashtrakutas declined, the Chalukyas of Kalyana rose. They led the Deccan into a golden age of strong culture, literature, temples, inscriptions, big military power, use of both Kannada and Sanskrit to record history and show royal authority. They also built a detailed hierarchy of power, organizing their kingdom into levels like kings, governors, vassals, etc. 5. Conflict with the Cholas. The Kalyana Chalukyas had to constantly fight the Chola Empire, which was just as powerful and spread across many regions. This was a clash between two giant Indian empires, both trying to control land and expand influence. 6. Deccan's global links. Throughout this time, the Deccan's connections to the outside world, especially through the Indian Ocean trade routes, continued to grow. Goods, people, and ideas flowed in and out, making the region more economically and culturally rich. Why this is important. This passage shows that Deccan history isn't just about war and kings. It's about how ordinary people became rulers, how they built new systems, spread culture, and connected to the rest of the world. The Deccan became a powerful and unique region with its own identity, blending local traditions with wider Indian and global ideas. Would you like me to create a visual timeline, map, or family tree of dynasties to go along with this summary? Here is a deep, simple, and detailed summary of the entire passage you shared. I will explain everything in the beginner-friendly, clear way possible, like teaching someone with no background knowledge. Summary. Long ago in South India, especially in a region called the Deccan, a large plateau in central southern India, a powerful royal family called the Chalukyas built a strong empire. Over many years, they created a system or model that showed others how to rule a large area successfully. This included how to control land and farming, called agrarian control, build temples and show religion, how to organize armies and rule cities, and how to run trade and exchange goods. They didn't just use violence, they also used smart ideas, rich art, grand buildings, new languages, and religious traditions to show their power. This entire system became a template or pattern for how to build an empire in the Deccan. After some time, smaller rulers who had worked under the Chalukyas, called feudatories or vassals, began using the same system. These smaller rulers were once just helpers of the Chalukya kings. But as the Chalukya power became weak, these feudatories became strong and started building their own kingdoms. They copied the Chalukya style of ruling, but adjusted it to fit their own lands. These new kingdoms were built in different parts of the Deccan, such as Telangana, southern Karnataka, Maharashtra. First, these regions were part of the Chalukya Empire, but later they became important kingdoms themselves. They also became part of bigger networks across India, where they shared knowledge, language, religion, art, and trade. Now let's look at some examples of how these feudatories became powerful kingdoms. 1. The Suna Yadavas in Maharashtra. Originally, they were Kannada-speaking warriors who served the Chalukyas. They helped the Chalukyas in battles, like defeating the Paramara king Vakpati in 994 CE. Slowly, they built their own kingdom, centered in Devagiri, now Davad in Maharashtra. They started using Marathi Sanskrit, showing cultural and language change. By the 1200s, they ruled a large part of Maharashtra. 2. The Hoysala in southern Karnataka. They were once allies of the Chalukyas and fought in battles for them, like the wars in Malwa and Chhattisgarh. Later, they built a powerful kingdom in southern Karnataka. Sometimes their rule even extended into the Kaveri River Valley, Tamil Nadu region. They became famous for beautiful temples, art, and literature. 3. The Kakatiyas in Telangana. They helped Chalukya king Someshwara I in a war at Kanchi, Tamil Nadu, in 1047-48. In the late 1100s, they became fully independent and built their own kingdom in Telangana. They copied many ideas from the Chalukyas but made them their own. They expanded into Vengi, a region that had been ruined by wars from Tamil and Kannada kingdoms. For the first time, they united all Telugu-speaking lands into one empire. This led to a huge movement of Telugu-speaking farmers and soldiers. They moved from the fertile eastern coast into the dry uplands of the Deccan. Over the next centuries, this changed the culture and politics of southern India in a big way. Big picture summary. The Chalukyas built the first strong system of empire in the Deccan. Their style of ruling, with temples, armies, trade, and art, became the model for others. After the Chalukyas became weak, smaller kings who had once worked under them rose up. These new kings, like the Yadavas, Hoysalas, and Kakatiyas, copied the Chalukya style but made it fit their own lands. They created new powerful kingdoms in Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Telangana. These kingdoms joined larger Indian networks of trade, knowledge, and culture. The ideas and culture of the Chalukyas lived on, even though their empire ended. If you want, I can also create a map or timeline, or give you a to help make it even clearer. Would you like that? Certainly. Detailed and deep summary of the passage, yet comprehensive manner. The three powerful dynasties and their rivalry. The Kakatiyas, Sona Yadavas, and Hoysalas were three important dynasties that ruled over different regions in South India during the medieval period. Kakatiyas ruled parts of what is today Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Sona Yadavas controlled the area around present-day Maharashtra. Hoysalas ruled over parts of modern Karnataka. These dynasties were in constant competition, especially for the supreme overlordship of the Deccan, the central region of India. This means they were become the most rulers in the area, with each family wanting to dominate the others. The wars and rivalry. Savage wars. The term savage wars highlights the intense and brutal nature of the battles these dynasties fought. These weren't just small skirmishes. They were full-scale, fierce wars that caused a lot of destruction and bloodshed. The dynasties not only fought for territory and power, but also for prestige, the right to call themselves the top rulers of the region. Architectural competition. These dynasties, like many others in Indian history, also competed architecturally. They tried to build the best and most impressive temples, which were symbols of their power and devotion. Temples from each dynasty were designed to show off their wealth, power, and cultural achievements, which were also seen as an expression of their divine right to rule. Kakatiya Ramappa Temple at Palampet. This temple, built by the Kakatiyas, is a recent addition to the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, meaning it is now recognized globally for its cultural significance. The Kakatiyas followed a style that combined beauty and symmetry, with the temple being one of the best examples of their architectural brilliance. Hoysala Vijayanarayana, Chennakeshava Temple at Belur. Built by the Hoysalas, this temple is another masterpiece of architecture. It is known for its intricate carvings and beautiful design, which reflect the Hoysala rulers' wealth and artistic tastes. Sonayava Gandeshvara Temple at Sinnar. The Sona Yadavas also built their own impressive temples, showing that all three dynasties were not only fighting wars, but also competing to leave behind the most magnificent structures. The Chalukya influence. All these dynasties, Kakatiyas, Sona Yadavas, and Hoysalas, based their architectural styles on the designs first established by the Chalukyas, who had ruled in the Deccan earlier. The Chalukyas were known for their distinct style of architecture, which was stellate, star-shaped, and staggered square forms. These features became the foundation for temple designs in the region. Patrons, rich people or kings who sponsored these temples, and sthapatis, the skilled architects who designed them, played a key role in spreading and improving these architectural influencing generations after the Chalukyas. The fall of Kalyana and the Chalukya dynasty. Kalyana was the capital city of the Chalukya rulers in the 12th century. It was a powerful city that controlled much of the Deccan and was the center of Chalukya rule. The Chalukyas, once known as the Chalukya Vallavas, had been powerful rulers who had dominated large parts of Kannada, Marathi, and Telugu lands for centuries. However, by the 12th century, the Chalukya dynasty began to lose its grip on power. The rise of the Kalachuris. The Kalachuri dynasty took over the Chalukyas when a man named Bijala defeated the Chalukya rulers in the 12th century. This event marked the fall of the Chalukya dynasty, and their long reign was brought to an abrupt and uncelebrated end. The phrase unceremonious end suggests that the Chalukyas did not fall with great drama or celebration. Instead, their defeat was sudden and without the glory that would have marked the end of a great empire. The Kalachuri dynasty, which had previously been a smaller and less powerful group, now became the dominant force in the region after Bijala overthrew the Chalukyas. This was a dramatic change in the power dynamics of the Deccan. The end of an era. The Chalukyas had ruled the Deccan for around 500 years, a period that was marked by their cultural and political achievements. The name of the Chalukya dynasty was once something that inspired awe across the Deccan region. However, their fall marked the end of a significant era in the history of South India. The Kalachuri defeat of the Chalukyas led to the rise of new powers in the Deccan, including the Kakatiyas, Sona Yadavas, and Hoysalas, each of whom contributed to the changing political and cultural landscape of the region. Summary of key points. 3 rival dynasties. The Kakatiyas, Sonayadavas, and Hoysalas fought fierce wars for control of the Deccan region and also competed in building magnificent temples. Architectural competition. These dynasties followed the architectural style set by the earlier Chalukya dynasty temples that reflected their power. Fall of Kalyana. The Chalukya dynasty, once the most powerful in the region, fell when Bijala of the Kalachuri dynasty defeated them in the 12th century, ending their 4-year reign. New power dynamics. With the fall of the Chalukyas, new regional powers like the Kakatiyas, Sonayadavas, and Hoysalas took over and changed the political and cultural landscape of the Deccan. This summary gives a complete picture of the situation in the Deccan during this period. It shows not just the power struggles, but also how the dynasty's architectural efforts reflected their status and their competition for supremacy. Absolutely. Let's now go even deeper, but still keep it in the simplest, clearest way possible, like teaching a curious beginner or a smart child. I'll take you step by step, explain all meanings, and give extra examples. We'll break this into clear sections so you can fully understand not just what happened, but why it mattered. 1. Background. What was going on before the movement? A. The Chalukyas ruled a big empire. The Chalukyas were a royal family, dynasty, that ruled the Deccan region of India for many centuries. They had a big, powerful empire with kings, ministers, armies, and temples. Their rule was strong, but also unequal, meaning some people had all the power and others had none. 2. What problems were growing under their rule? A. Rich and upper caste people were growing more powerful. The kings built more and more fancy, elite temples for upper caste people like Brahmins. These temples were symbols of wealth and control, not just places of worship. B. Poor people, women, and lower castes were left out. Women were not given equal respect. They had low status. People from lower castes or working professions, farmers, cleaners, etc., were seen as less important. The society was run like a pyramid. Top equals kings, priests, Brahmins, soldiers, rich landowners. Women, low castes. The bottom people had no voice. C. Land and money were going to a few people. Wealth, land, gold, jobs was going to rich landowners, aristocrats. These people were close to the king and politics. So what did this mean? Most people felt left out. They couldn't enter temples, become priests, or speak up. Religion was no longer for everyone. It was for the rich and powerful only. 3. A reaction begins, the start of a new movement. A. Ask, is this fair? And to question the system. Why can't a poor person worship God? Why should someone's caste decide if they're respected? Do we really need priests and temples to talk to God? B. From these questions came a bold new idea, Virashaivism. A new bhakti devotion movement was born. It was called Virashaivism. Vira equals brave, heroic. Shaiva equals worshipper of Shiva, a major god in Hinduism. So Virashaiva equals brave worshipper of Shiva. 4. What did the Virashaivas believe? A. God is for everyone, not just for Brahmins and kings. They said Shiva loves everyone, rich or poor, man or woman, any caste. Example, a poor woman sweeping the floor has the same right to love Shiva as a king in a palace. B. Caste and gender are unfair and should be rejected. They said, no more caste system, no more treating women less. We are equal before God. C. You don't need a temple to reach Shiva. They believed that true devotion happens in your heart, not in a stone building. You can pray anywhere, while walking, eating, working. Example, plowing his field can think of Shiva and feel God's presence, just like a priest in a big temple. D. The Vedas are not the only truth. The Vedas were old religious texts used by Brahmins to control knowledge. Virashaiva said, you don't need the Vedas to know God. God can be known by love, not just by reading Sanskrit books. 5. Where did they spread their ideas? A. In a special hall called the Anubhava Mandapa. This was a big open hall in a city called Kalyana. Anyone could come, not just Brahmins or men. Women, low caste people, common workers, all were welcome. People sat together, talked, sang poems, and discussed deep ideas. You can think of it like an ancient open university or spiritual democracy. It was revolutionary. 6. How did they share their ideas? A. Through simple, emotional poems and songs. These poems were called vachanas, meaning sayings. They were written in simple language, so everyone could understand. They expressed love for Shiva, anger against injustice, hope for an equal world. Example of a Virashaiva message, in easy words. I don't need gold or a temple. I carry Shiva in my heart. I don't care if I'm a woman or low-born. I know my God listens to me. What were they really fighting against? A. Unfairness and greed. They were angry at the rich landowners who took all the land and treated poor people badly. These landowners were close to the Chalukya kings, so criticizing them was bold. B. Empty rituals and religious control. They saw how religion had become a tool to control, not to love. They said, real devotion is in your soul, not in rituals. Why was this movement so powerful and special? A. It gave hope and voice to the forgotten. People who had no power finally felt seen. Women, farmers, workers, and untouchables began to feel they mattered. B. It changed how people thought about God. Before, only priests could talk to God. After, everyone could feel close to God. C. It was spiritual and social revolution. Not just a religion, it was this. It was one of the first movements in India to say, we are all equal. God doesn't care about caste or gender. Simple final story. A long time ago, in a place called the Deccan, kings like the Chalukyas made temples and gave power to rich people. Poor people and women were treated unfairly. But some brave people called the Virashaivas stood up and said, Shiva is for all people, not just the rich or high caste. Caste and gender don't matter to God. You can feel God in your heart, even without a temple. They sang poems, met in halls, and spoke boldly, and their ideas changed the way people thought about religion, power, and fairness. Would you like a visual diagram, comic-style story, timeline to help understand even better? I'm happy to make it. Here is a deep, detailed, and variable summary of everything we just learned, explained step by step, like for a beginner. The Virashaiva movement and the fall of Kalyana. 1. What was happening before the movement? In the 1100 CE, 12th century, the Deccan region, south in powerful kings and dynasties like the Chalukya and Kalachurish, ruling from a city called Kalyana. These kings built big temples, gave power and land to upper caste people, and followed strict caste and gender rules. Women and people from lower castes had very little freedom or respect. 2. A new movement began, the Virashaivas. A new religious and social movement started in this time. It was called the Virashaiva movement, also called Lingayat movement later. It was started by a great saint and leader named Basavana, who was a minister, high official, in the Kalachuri king's court. He believed God Shiva is not only for Brahmins or temple priests. He said, everyone is equal, man or woman, rich or poor, high caste or low caste. He taught that you don't need temples or rituals to find God. He said, God is in your heart. God listens to true love and devotion. 3. Poets from all walks of life joined the movement. Hundreds of men and women from different castes and jobs became part of this movement. They wrote short, powerful poems in Kannada, the local language. They shared their deep feelings for Shiva and their anger against injustice. Some famous people in this group: Basavana, Brahmin and leader of the movement; Akka Mahadevi, woman poet who left royal life and devoted herself to Shiva; Alama Prabhu, deep thinker, saint, and poet; Madara Chennaya, a shoemaker, very low caste, but honored as a saint; Sanka, a sex worker, who also became a respected poet; Siddharama, a coward who became a saint; Rimave, a thread maker who also became a spiritual poet. Message of their poems: we don't need caste, priests, we don't need temples. Shiva is with anyone who truly loves him. 4. Why was this dangerous for the rulers? The movement was not just spiritual, it was revolutionary. It challenged the king's power, criticized the rich landowners and Brahmins, encouraged lower castes and up. This made the ruling class, the powerful people in Kalyana, very angry and afraid. Mashar 5. What happened to the movement and the city of Kalyana? According to old stories, like the Basava Purana, the kings and lords of Kalyana tried to crush the movement. There was violence. The king Bijala was killed, maybe by people angry about the oppression. The great city of Kalyana was destroyed. The Virashaiva followers were forced to run away and scatter to other parts of South India. After this, people used to say, Ketetu Kalyana, meaning Kalyana is ruined. Up 6. What happened after that? Even though the city was destroyed, the Virashaiva movement did not die. The ideas of equality, devotion, and social justice spread across Karnataka and other parts of South India. A town in that place is now called Basavakalyan, named after Basavana. The poems of the Virashaivas became a major part of Kannada literature. 7. Why is this important in history? It was one of the earliest social reform movements in India. It fought against the caste system, patriarchy, and religious control. It gave a voice to ordinary people, including women and the poor. It changed the language of literature from elite Sanskrit to people's Kannada. It inspired future spiritual and social movements. Final thought. The Virashaivas, led by Basavana, started a movement of love, equality, and courage. They stood up to kings and priests, saying, Shiva belongs to everyone, not just the rich or powerful. Even when their city was destroyed, their ideas lived on, and still live today. Would you like a timeline of events? A chart comparing old versus new ideas? A picture or comic explanation? Let me know. I'll make it super fun to understand. Here is a great of the full passage you gave, written in very simple English, like teaching a beginner or child. I've broken it into clear parts, explained the events step by step, and added extra background so you fully understand it. Part 1. India's changing map. New kingdoms were rising. During the same time that the Deccan, south-central India, was changing and the Chalukyas were falling, other parts of India were also seeing big changes. In areas like Madhya Pradesh, central India, the northwest, like Rajasthan, and the Ganges, lands near the Ganga River, forming. Two important ones were the Chandelas, famous for building the Khajuraho temples. The Chahamanas, also called Chauhans, known for warriors like Prithviraj Chauhan. Part 2. Invasions from Central Asia. New enemies arrived. From the 900 CE onward, groups of Central Asian nomads, people who moved from place to place with horses, began invading different parts of Asia, including South Asia, India, West Asia, Iran, Iraq, and East Asia, China, Mongolia. They were fierce horse-riding warriors. One of these invading groups was the Turks, who came into North India around the late 1100 CE. They fought and defeated many Indian kings and kingdoms. Part 3. The Delhi Sultanate, a new Muslim empire in India. After defeating North Indian kingdoms, the Turks founded the Delhi Sultanate, a Muslim empire, in 1206 CE. This new power began ruling northern India from the city of Delhi. They needed a lot of money to fight even stronger enemies like the Mongols, another group of warriors from Central Asia, so they looked south towards the Deccan for wealth and resources. Part 4. Attacks on the Deccan. North invades South. By the late 1200s, the Delhi Sultanate gathered armies from all over northern India and began invading the Deccan. By the early 1300s, 3 major southern kingdoms were defeated by them. Hoysalas in Karnataka, Sona Yadavas in Maharashtra, Kakatiyas in Telangana, Andhra. The Delhi rulers set up military bases, garrisons, in the Deccan to keep control. But their control didn't last long. Part 5. Delhi's rule fails in the south. Even though Delhi had sent armies and taken control, it failed to rule the Deccan well. Why? Because the Deccan had strong local cultures and leaders. People didn't want to be ruled by a faraway power in Delhi. The region was too big and different from the north. So, the Deccan broke away from Delhi's control. Part 6. New kingdoms in the Deccan. Persianate influence. After Delhi lost control, new kingdoms rose in the Deccan. Some were formed from the remains of old Chalukya states. These new kingdoms were influenced by Persian culture, language, art, clothes, etc. We call this Persianate influence. Part 7. Bahmani Sultanate, a new powerful kingdom. In the 1400 CE, a new Muslim kingdom called the Bahmani Sultanate was formed in the city of Gulbarga, North Deccan, Karnataka. It was a very powerful kingdom and followed many Persian traditions. But after some time, it broke into 5 smaller kingdoms, called the 5 Deccan Sultanates. 1. Bijapur, 2. Golconda, 4. Bidar, Berar. These ruled different parts of the Deccan during the 1500s. Part 8. Vijayanagara Empire, a great Hindu power in the south. While the North Deccan was ruled by Muslim sultanates, south of the Tungabhadra River, a great Hindu empire rose, the Vijayanagara Empire. It ruled over southern Karnataka and the Tamil-speaking regions. Vijayanagara was strong, wealthy, and successful, and resisted many Deccan invaders. It became one of the greatest empires in Indian history. Final summary. Full picture in simple words. In the 1100s to 1300s, many new kingdoms rose in India, while old ones like the Chalukyas fell. From Central Asia, Turkic warriors invaded and started the Delhi Sultanate. Delhi's armies attacked the Deccan and defeated powerful South Indian kingdoms, but they couldn't rule the Deccan for long. Out of the chaos, new Muslim kingdoms, like Bahmani and the 5 Sultanates, and a strong Hindu empire, were born. These new powers shaped the Deccan for the next 300 years. If you want, I can also make a timeline chart, a map showing who ruled where, or a visual story like a comic. Just let me know. Here is a great summary of the passage in the simplest possible language, like teaching a total beginner or child. Summary. Vijayanagara and the Deccan Sultanates in the 1500s. In the 1500s, 16th century, 2 of the most powerful and active kingdoms in all of South India were 1. The Vijayanagara Empire, a Hindu kingdom in southern Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. 2. The Bijapur Sultanate, a Muslim kingdom in northern Karnataka, based in an old Chalukya capital city. These 2 were not just strong, they were famous for having huge populations, lots of people, being vibrant and full of life, trade, arts, and innovation. Big contribution, connecting the Deccan to the world. Both kingdoms deeply connected the Deccan to the wider world. They expanded global trade, meaning they traded goods with Arabia, Persia, Africa, and Europe. They followed and grew the trade network started by earlier dynasties like the Chalukyas, Vallabhas. What did they trade? Outgoing goods, spices, diamonds, cloth, pearls. Incoming goods, horses, web items, new technologies. Not just goods, they wanted people too. These kingdoms didn't only bring in products, they also invited people, especially skilled professionals from Persia, Iran, Turkey, Ottoman and Central Asia, and even Portugal, Europe. These foreigners came as soldiers, gun makers, musicians, architects, advisors, writers, and traders. This made these kingdoms culturally rich and globally connected. European recognition of Indian talent. A Portuguese governor in India named Alfonso de Albuquerque, who ruled from Goa, a city that was once a famous, wrote to the King of Portugal. He said that Indian gunsmiths, people who made guns from Bijapur, were as skilled as gunmakers in Germany. This showed that India was not behind Europe in talent or technology. Vijayanagara's military strategy, buying war horses. The Vijayanagara Empire spent a lot of money to buy strong war horses from across the Indian Ocean, places like Arabia, Iran, and Africa. They needed these horses because horses were essential for armies, like tanks are today. Indian horses were not strong enough, so they had to import ones. This military strategy was not new. It was first used centuries ago by the Rashtrakutas, another great South Indian dynasty. Vijayanagara brought back this ancient military wisdom. Conclusion. Vijayanagara and Bijapur were 2 powerful and advanced kingdoms in 1500 South India. They brought in trade, talent, and technology from around the world. They were respected even by European rulers. They revived old smart strategies like importing horses to keep their armies strong. These kingdoms showed how South India was deeply connected to global history, not isolated or backward. Would you like a visual chart, line, or comparison tape to make this summary even easier to remember?